I think, I think the media is too hard on Elon Musk because of all his bad tweets. And I get it, his tweets are bad. But I think sometimes we in the media lack perspective. If you think 100 years from now, our historians and our progeny more generally, are they going to care more about all the stupid tweets he said, or are they going to care about the fact that, he accelerated the widespread advent of electric cars, which was huge for climate change, probably 5 or 10 years earlier than it would have, that he basically took us back to space. Just today, the FDA cleared a breakthrough treatment that could potentially restore blindness to people that have been blind their whole lives. I mean, this is a lot for a single lifetime, so more than I could say for myself.
Yeah, Henry Ford was a great guy. I think you could say it about a lot of people. And, this guy has positives, as you know. I think I probably interview him more than anybody, and has done an astonishing stuff around EVs and around space and other things with the help of a lot of people, by the way.
And the government.
And the government. $18.5 billion in government contracts right now. A loan that saved Tesla at the time, even as he trashes the government. He will have a mixed record, I think, and unfortunately, because of Twitter and what he's doing there, he is tarnishing what was a really an astonishing array of achievements, and that's unfortunate for him, and over-promising and under-delivering around EVs.
So first of all, I think, Coleman, you make actually a pretty strong case for yourself. I know Kara disagrees. But one of the things about Elon Musk's tweets is that it suggests like a deeper instability. And when you've got somebody who has the power to control a lot of things, not just X, but Starlink, he has a lot of power in the Ukraine-Russia war in terms of just the information flow. You have to wonder, I mean, is this guy really stable?
Is he stable?
Yeah. Shouldn't that be a global worry? I mean, he's very powerful.
He is very powerful, and I tend to lean more where Coleman is on this. I think and I'm not an expert on the industries that he's in to the extent that you are. I will tell you this, though. Whenever I turn on the television, I see one of those rockets landing on its own back on the pad. It's cool as hell. And then I realize the government's asked him to rescue our astronauts next year. I'm thinking, obviously, this guy plays a role in our society that I think is often diminished by his political opponents. So I think I'm where you are. But of course,
I think he does it to himself. Come on, he walks into it. By what he's doing around Twitter, because he can't help himself, because he has a problem with id. He just can't stop it. I think he's veering into another person who I'd actually compare him to, which is Howard Hughes, who did enormous, astonishing things around aerospace, not aerospace, but airlines and aviation. Astonishing, interesting entrepreneur of a different era. And of course, his mania and everything else, a lot of problems that he had, left that on the carpet, unfortunately. Now, of course, there still was Hughes aircraft and other things like that, and he contributed. I just think, unfortunately, someone who had such promise there could be real troubles around Tesla. There could be he's not putting the focus where it needs to be, which is on these achievements.
And not for nothing, I mean, the idea of a trillionaire.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be him.
There's
many others. I think it'll be an AI person.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with being very wealthy, but that just seems like an insane amount of money that a human being needs.
But I think it's an important case study. If you're sort of looking at that economic success, you really can't do it without the federal government. They backstopped everything. They basically handed NASA to Elon. Good things happening, but it's a lot of government interaction. Can't believe I'm saying it as a Republican.
It's not.
But government's made a lot of billionaires. Governor's made a lot of billionaires.
We should have taken warrants in that.
Very last
right.
A lot of people get government contracts. Not a lot of people can start company after company after company that revolutionize all these different industries. And if the most important movers and shakers throughout history had Twitters, I think we'd be disappointed by more of them.
Can I ask you a question? Do you know the name Gwen Shotwell?
No.
No, she's running SpaceX, actually. The problem with Elon is everyone attributes everything to him. Did he found Tesla? No, he did not. Like, the thing I would like to see is that Gwen Shotwell is the reason SpaceX is so successful. You never see her, but she's critical. And there's a lot of people at Tesla. There's the people who founded Tesla. His name's Martin Eberhard. There's all kinds of people involved. And unfortunately, because of the great man theory of industrial...
He's also very good at finding talent.
That is true. So is Steve Jobs. But I can tell you, Steve Jobs certainly wouldn't have behaved like this.
All right, everybody.